Hi, my name is Bethany Yeiser. I'm here today with Dr. Robert McCullumsmith from the University of Cincinnati, who has both an MD and a PhD. He's also the father of 5 children. We're going to talk a little bit today about what I wish I'd known about schizophrenia when I was a teenager. I remember growing up being very serious about violin, very serious about school, having big dreams for my future. I never dreamed that schizophrenia would develop and be a big interruption in my life while I tried lots of different medications and finally got better. So Dr. McCullumsmith, what should teenagers know about schizophrenia?
Well, this is a really difficult illness and difficult diagnosis to talk about. I mean, when I have to call a parent of a teenager or a young adult and on the phone say, hey, I think your child has schizophrenia, that's like telling someone they have cancer.
Wow.
That's a really serious diagnosis. I don't think people realize that. And it's something we take very seriously, diagnosing this, treating this, thinking about it as an illness, thinking about how it affects young people, and not just the day of presentation or that year, but the whole arc of the illness involves their entire life because it's a lifelong illness.
Now, you are a father of 5 and you coach soccer, so you see a lot of young adults. And you know that 1 out of 100 of these kids will develop schizophrenia, and many of them will have a friend, a loved one, relative who develops schizophrenia. What do you want these teenage kids to know about schizophrenia?
Well, that's a great idea to bring up. So, when I'm talking to kids or high school groups or whatever, I'll ask them, so how many kids are in your graduating class?
Yeah.
Or even a college, a class of college students, a class of medical students, and someone will raise their hand and say 300. And based on the statistics, 3 of their classmates are going to have schizophrenia because it's about 1 in 100. And that really brings it home.
Yes.
So if you think about, if you were in a school and there were 100 people in your senior class, somebody you know from that class is going to have schizophrenia.
Right.
And schizophrenia is not a disease that starts when you're 1 year old in terms of being its presentation.
Correct.
You pretty much develop normally to 16, 17, 18 years old, and then you crash.
For me, it was 21.
For you, it was 21. And so it's a really heartbreaking illness.
Yeah.
Because you have a person who's afflicted, who's developed normally, has survived childhood, if you will, survived early being a teenager,
yes,
and all of the difficulty of puberty,
yeah,
and then all of a sudden their brain's not working right.
Yeah.
And their mom and dad are asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
And about half the time, the person with schizophrenia doesn't think they're sick.
Right. For me, when I was diagnosed, I was very certain I didn't have it. Again, I thought I was an ordinary person, a smart person, a regular person, and not an eccentric person. I didn't know what schizophrenia was. I didn't realize that this was a treatable brain disease. Can schizophrenia be compared to other physical illnesses like diabetes, cancer? I mean, these are all physical.
Yeah, it's a difficult comparison. So the way I think about diseases, a disease is something you know the cause of. So if someone has type 1 diabetes in childhood, mm-hmm, the islet cells in their pancreas have died. They're no longer making insulin. Mm-hmm. There's lots of reasons why those special cells in the pancreas that make insulin could have died. Sometimes it's viral, sometimes it's an autoimmune disease. We can connect the dots for diabetes. We know the cause of diabetes. That makes diabetes a disease. Mm-hmm. Schizophrenia is a syndrome. It's a grouping. It's a grouping of symptoms and signs that if you have this certain pattern, then we give you this label, schizophrenia. And so it's very different in that way. Now, there are sort of traditional medical illnesses that are also syndromes, mm-hmm, and there's a lot of them. Okay. But it's important to differentiate that.
So for me, a big breakthrough was when I realized that I had a treatable brain disease. Schizophrenia was not my fault. And no matter what choices I would have made, this disease was going to develop anyway. I didn't realize it was a brain disease like other diseases, cancer, diabetes. You could compare it to breaking a leg. I didn't realize it was treatable on medication. And I also didn't realize that I couldn't conquer it by willpower. I thought if I just really focused on how I was behaving, tried to act normal, I could get over it. But it's not possible to conquer mental illness with willpower.
So, the idea of mental illness and willpower is difficult. There's an idea in psychiatry about resiliency. And so when you think about somebody being resilient to stress, there's certainly genetic contributions and environmental contributions to resiliency. But the idea that somebody catches schizophrenia because they have poor willpower,
or they're weak,
schizophrenia is not caused by bad parenting.
Right.
It's not caused by somebody who has sort of weaknesses in their personality. This is a medical illness where there's changes in brain chemistry that cause the onset of symptoms around the age of 18 to 25.
Okay.
It's a serious brain disease. This is not about how hard you tried at algebra, all right, or who was the best soccer player in the field because he never gives up on the play. This isn't about how hard or how little you worked. This is a disease that has a strong genetic underpinning.